Most people think respect is earned by talking louder. That's wrong. It's like believing a rocket launches because you scream at it. Noise doesn't move rockets, and it doesn't move people either. Precision does. So here's the big question. If you walked into a room right now, whether it's a board meeting, a family fight, or even just a casual conversation, could you drop one sentence that makes everyone stop, listen, and actually respect you? Most people can't. And that's the problem. But stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'll show you exactly how to do it. And no, it won't require shouting, intimidation, or pretending to be someone you're not. It requires something better. Words that hit harder than volume. Words that turn silence into your ally. That's what we're about to uncover. Most people believe that the louder they speak, the more they will be respected, but that is one of the dumbest myths we keep repeating because volume never equals respect. In fact, the world is full of loud people who are ignored every single slash day. And if yelling worked, then Twitter arguments would have solved global warming by now. But they haven't, and they never will, because respect is not about decibels. It is about clarity, precision, and the ability to say something that cuts through noise like a laser through steel. And I want you to pause and think about this for a moment. Imagine walking into a meeting at work where everyone is talking over each other, throwing ideas, shouting their perspectives, trying to look smart now. Picture yourself saying one simple sentence, calm, clear, and precise, and suddenly the room falls silent because they know you are not just talking, you are delivering something worth listening to. That is the real power, not screaming, not intimidation, not empty volume, but the precision of words placed at exactly the right time, like launching a rocket, not when you feel like it, but when the math says it is ready. And here is the big question. Can you do that? Can you walk into any room, into any argument, into any casual conversation and speak in such a way that people stop and respect you, not because you demanded it, but because you own the space with clarity? If you cannot, then you are already at a disadvantage because the world rewards those who can. And the good news is, and this is not something you are either born with or without. It is something you can learn, practice, refine, and master because words are like code. They either run smoothly and create results, or they crash the system and leave you embarrassed. Most people write terrible code in conversation. They use filler words, noise, defensive tones, and instead of producing results, they produce chaos. That is why so many meetings end without decisions, so many relationships end in resentment, so many voices get ignored. But imagine being the person who writes elegant conversational code, short lines, clean logic, precise outcomes. That is what makes rockets fly, and that is what makes people listen. So today I am going to break this down for you, and by the end, you will know exactly how to take command of respect without ever raising your voice, because raising your voice is like hitting a broken engine with a hammer. It makes noise, but the engine does not fix itself. Precision does. And the 7D way you develop. The precision is by learning the right frameworks and the right phrases that shift dynamics instantly. Now, let me be blunt. If you are someone who thinks respect is about intimidation, you are already losing because intimidation might work for a moment, but it collapses long term. The second someone stronger or louder enters the room, your fake power evaporates. Real power comes from consistency, from the ability to say something so measured, so calm, and so unshakable that others adjust themselves around you. And this is not theory, it is physics. Social physics. When you remain calm and precise, you become the stable object, and unstable objects revolve around you. And that is why Stoic philosophers like Epictetus and emperors like Marcus Aurelius understood the same principle. Thousands of years ago, power is not in reaction but in control, not in shouting but in measured words. And in our time, whether you are leading a company, building a team, or just trying to win a family argument, the principle is the same. The one who can speak clearly without losing control commands respect, and this is exactly what we are going to explore. Across this lecture, 5 phrases that shift any conversation in your favor, 5 tools that make noise irrelevant, 5 ways to make people pause, listen, and recalibrate how they see you. And before we go there, let us confront the myth head on, because you might still be thinking, isn't passion shown in volume? No, passion is shown in persistence, in some pure precision and results. Anyone can scream, but not everyone can be calm under pressure. Think about rockets again. When SpaceX launched the Falcon 1, we failed 3 times in a row. Millions of dollars gone engines, exploding, people laughing, the press, calling us a failure. And in those moments, do you think shouting at engineers would have solved anything? No, what mattered was precision, data clarity, and the ability to communicate exactly what needed to change. So, on the fourth attempt, we succeeded not because we screamed, but because we spoke with precision. And the same is true in your conversations. Screaming never builds rockets. Screaming never builds respect, but clarity does. And here is why this matters to you directly every day. You are in micro negotiations, whether with your boss, your colleagues, your spouse, your kids, or even strangers. You are always signaling whether you are someone worth respecting or someone easy to dismiss. And you might not realize it, but the words you choose shape how people file you in their mental. The folders, either leader or follower, either serious or background noise. And if you are tired of being background noise, then this is your wake-up call to shift the way you speak, because one sentence delivered with calm precision can rewrite and the way people categorize you permanently. So, here is what I want you to hold in your head. As we move forward, respect is not about loudness, it is about weight. And the weight of your words is not measured in volume, it is measured in precision and conviction. And when you combine those two, you create gravity. And gravity is impossible to ignore. So imagine this: from today forward, every conversation you enter, you are not there to add noise, you are there to add gravity, you are there to drop words. So precise and so clear that they bend the room around them, and that is not exaggeration. It is how leaders move people, how innovators move industries, how thinkers move history, not by shouting, but by speaking with such clarity that silence follows. And if you want to command respect in your own life, that is the path you must take. And over the next parts of this lecture, I will show you exactly how. But right now, commit to one thing: stop confusing loudness with power, because loudness is cheap, clarity is rare, and in a world drowning in noise, the rarest thing of all is what earns the deepest respect. If you really want to understand why words matter more than noise, you have to think about how the universe itself works, because nothing in physics rewards noise. A rocket does not lift off because someone screams at it. It lifts because the equations are correct, the fuel mixture is precise, and the timing is exact. That is the difference between chaos and flight. Precision always beats noise, and human interaction is no different. You can be the loudest person in the room and still be ignored. But if you drop one perfectly calculated sentence, you can shift the entire conversation in your favor. Think about it in meetings: when someone rambles on for 10 minutes, people tune out. But when someone speaks a single clear sentence that actually matters, everyone leans in and takes notes. Why? Because our brains are wired to respond to clarity. The human nervous system is constantly trying to conserve energy, and noise forces people to waste energy, filtering what is important from what is irrelevant. Clarity saves them energy, and anything that saves energy wins attention. This is not philosophy, this is biology. Now, let me take it further, because people often confuse activity with productivity, just like they confuse noise with respect. But being active is not the same as producing results, and being loud is not the same as commanding authority. A Tesla factory can have machines moving everywhere, but if the process is inefficient, all you get is chaos. Yet one small adjustment in the code can streamline the entire operation. In conversation, you are either adding chaos or streamlining interaction, and the ones who get remembered are the ones who make communication efficient, precise, and undeniable. And this is why words matter more than noise. When you are precise, you create leverage. When you are noisy, you create resistance. So let us translate that into real life. You walk into a boardroom where everyone is throwing opinions around, and you wait and listen, and then you say calmly, "I understand your point, but I disagree." And suddenly the chaos has a counterweight. Or you are in a family argument and people are yelling, and you say, "Let's talk," when we can do so respectfully. And the room changes tone, not because you shouted louder, but because you shifted the framework of the dialogue. This is leverage through precision, and the effect is exponential, because every time you use it, you build reputation. People start to expect that when you speak, it will matter, and they automatically quiet down. This is how leaders are made, not through noise, but through accumulated precision. Elon Musk did not convince investors by screaming at them. He convinced them by showing precise data about rocket reusability, by demonstrating math that could not be ignored. He was ridiculed, mocked, and dismissed. But every precise explanation built more gravity, until the same people who laughed had to admit he was right. That is the power of precision. In words now, apply this to your life. You may not be the building rockets, but you are building influence in your circle of work, family, and community, and your influence is determined less by how often you speak and more by how effectively you speak. Think about your boss who sits through dozens of meetings. If you are the person who always talks too long, you fade into the background. If you are the person who always says something short, sharp, and correct, you become the one they remember. That is not noise. That is clarity, and clarity is rare, so it earns respect. The mistake most people make is believing that emotion expressed through volume proves conviction, but conviction is not how loud you say it. Conviction is how unshakable your words are, even when spoken softly. Imagine someone standing in front of you whispering something that is undeniably true. Would you dismiss them? No, you would lean in to hear better because truth has its own volume. That is the lesson the world tries to hide from you, that respect is not volume dependent. It is truth dependent, and truth delivered with precision pierces louder than any shout. Now, some of you might wonder, isn't there a time to be loud, maybe to rally people or show urgency? Sure, volume can amplify, but only if it rides on top of precision. If you yell nonsense, it is still nonsense. Just louder if you yell truth. It can mobilize, but the mobilization comes from the truth, not the decibels. So don't confuse the amplifier with the message. Get the message right first. Then you can turn the volume knob if needed. Most people skip the message and just crank the volume, and that is why they fail again and again and wonder why no one respects them. So if you want practical steps, start training yourself to replace long, noisy explanations with precise statements. Stop over explaining. Stop trying to win by exhausting the other person. Instead, practice the discipline of boiling your thought down to its sharpest edge, like engineers boiling down equations. You want the minimal expression that still holds full power, because when you deliver that people cannot ignore it, it slices through distraction and forces them to reconsider their own position. This is the real world equivalent of physics in conversation. Energy always flows to the most 5 get stable equation. So make your words stable, make them precise. Now let us zoom out. Why does this matter so much today more than ever? Because the world is drowning in noise. Social media has turned everyone into a broadcaster, and the result is billions of people shouting for attention all at once. But very few are saying anything worth remembering. So when you choose to speak with precision, you become a signal in a world of static. And signals are what people follow. Ask yourself, who do you follow online? The four loudest ranter, or the person whose words cut through and actually make sense? Exactly. This is why precision scales and noise drowns. And if you understand that, you suddenly have a competitive advantage in every part of your life, because respect in the modern age that belongs to those who can rise above noise with clarity. This is not about being smarter than others. It is about being disciplined, more disciplined in thinking, more disciplined in speaking, and more disciplined in refusing to add chaos when everyone else is contributing to it. Discipline is the edge, and if you want to see it in action, look at how innovation happens. The loudest critics always get attention at first, but the precise builders win long term, because reality responds to precision, not to shouting. Gravity does not care how loud you are, it cares how correct you are, and people, even if they don't admit it, respond the same way. They might be dazzled by volume for a moment, but they will respect precision forever. So if you want lasting influence, stop chasing noise and start mastering clarity. And once you do that, you will find that the world begins to bend toward your words, because words matter more than noise always. If you want to understand the psychology of respect, you have to strip away all the cultural myths and just look at how the human brain is wired, because at its core, respect is not some mystical quality. It is a neurological response to signals of stability, competence, and control. When people sense you are stable, they relax around you. When they sense you are competent, they listen to you. And when they sense you are in control of yourself, they naturally give you authority. This is biology, not philosophy. Humans have evolved to follow those who can keep their head when everyone else is losing theirs. It is the same reason you listen to the calmest voice in a crisis, not the loudest one in panic. Imagine you are on a plane and there is turbulence. Would you trust the passengers screaming in row 17, or the pilot calmly announcing what is happening from the cockpit? Exactly. Your brain is wired to respect calm control, because that signals survival. And this is why, in any argument and any Meeting in any debate, the person who remains calm while others escalate will eventually be the one everyone orbits around, even if they disagree with the content. They cannot ignore the control. The psychology here is simple. Our nervous system constantly scans for safety cues. When you raise your voice aggressively, you trigger threat responses in others. Their amygdala activates fight or flight, and once that happens, they stop listening to your words. They are only preparing on their defense. But when you speak with calm precision, you bypass threat responses and activate higher reasoning in their prefrontal cortex. This means they actually process what you said instead of just defending themselves. So, in pure neurological terms, calm, precise, words literally have more influence because they land in the part of the brain that can consider, adapt, and respect. Now, let me give you an example from my own world. When Tesla was weeks away from bankruptcy in 2008, emotions were through the roof. People were scared, frustrated, some even angry. But imagine if I had walked into the factory and shouted, "Do better, work harder. This is your fault." That would have been useless. It would have triggered more fear and resentment. Instead, I chose to be calm and clear to say, "Look, the situation is dire, but if we pull together, if we focus, if we launch the Model S and prove electric cars can be viable, we will not only survive, we will make history." That calm clarity shifted the psychology of the room. It gave people something solid to stand on when everything else was shaking. And that is the psychology of respect. People respect the one who gives them stability, not the one who adds more chaos. Now you can apply this in your own life. Maybe you are in an argument with your spouse and they are raising their voice. If you match their volume, it escalates both of you. You get defensive. Nothing gets solved. But if you hold calm and respond with something like, "I hear your frustration. Let's continue this when we can be respectful." You shift the psychology suddenly. The other person has to decide, do they keep screaming at someone who is calm, or do they match your tone? And almost always they eventually lower their tone because your calmness is contagious. That is mirror neurons at work. Humans unconsciously mirror the emotional states of those around them. So if you stay calm, you eventually pull others toward calm. If you get loud, you escalate them toward more noise. So which one earns respect? Obviously the calm, precision, because it shows mastery not just of the situation, but of yourself and self. Mastery is the highest signal of strength. We people pick up on it immediately. Even children do this. If you scream at a child, they scream back. But if you calmly say that behavior is not appropriate, they stop and pay attention. Why? Because calmness signals certainty, and certainty signals leadership. The psychology of respect also involves boundaries. People respect those who communicate boundaries clearly without hostility. When you say, "I understand your point, but I disagree," you show that you value the other person's view, but you will not be swayed mindlessly. That boundary earns respect because it proves you are thinking independently. Humans unconsciously respect autonomy. When you say, "I don't find that appropriate," you communicate that your dignity has a line, and that line cannot be crossed without consequence. People respect that too, even if they do not like it, because boundaries signal self-respect, and the self-respect is contagious. One of the worst positions to be in is seeking respect from others while not respecting yourself first, because humans can smell that insecurity and they will never give you what you are desperate for. But when you respect yourself enough to speak with precision, to set boundaries, to refuse noise, people respond with recognition. The psychology is that simple. Another layer is consistency. People do not respect those who wobble every time pressure hits. They respect those who are consistent under fire. This is why Marcus Aurelius could lead an empire without theatrics. He was consistent in his composure, and consistency breeds trust, which breeds respect, because people always respect what they can predict. Humans hate uncertainty and love and stability. So when you speak consistently with clarity, you become the stable point, and people orient to you whether consciously or unconsciously. Think about any great leader in history, and you will notice this trait they may not have has been the loudest, but they were the most consistent in message and tone, and that built respect. So here is the takeaway. If you want to command respect, learn the psychology, not the performance. Stop thinking it is about pretending to be strong. It is about actually being in control of yourself. Because once you are in control, your words land differently. Your calmness is felt, your precision is trusted, and your consistency is admired. People do not articulate it, but they sense it, and they respond to it. And this is the hidden engine behind respect. And if you master it, you will walk into any room and shift the psychology automatically because humans are wired to respect the person who is calm, clear, consistent, and in control while everyone else is noisy, emotional, and unstable. And that is why words matter not because they are flashy, but because they reveal control, and control is what the human brain respects above all else. Now it is time to get practical, because all the philosophy in the world does not matter if you cannot translate it into action. So let me give you 5 specific phrases that, when spoken at the right moment, can completely shift the dynamics of any conversation. These phrases are not magic spells, they are tools. And like any tool, their power depends on how and when you use them. But if you use them with precision, you will discover that they compel respect in ways shouting never can. The first phrase is, I understand your point, but I disagree. And this may sound almost too simple, but it carries enormous psychological weight because it accomplishes 2 things at once. It validates the other person, and it asserts your independence. When you say this calmly, you are signaling that you are listening, that you value input, but that you are not a follower. You think for yourself, and in the modern world, independence of thought is a rare commodity. Picture yourself in a meeting where someone proposes an idea that is deeply flawed. If you say that's wrong, you create unnecessary conflict. If you stay silent, you allow bad ideas to pass. But if you calmly say, I understand your point, but I disagree, you position yourself as thoughtful, confident, and firm without aggression. It is exactly how I have often responded when critics told me Tesla would never succeed. In fact, entire panels of experts lined up to explain why electric cars were doomed. I could have shouted back, but instead, I would calmly say, I understand your perspective, but I disagree, and here is why. Then I laid out the logic and the data, and slowly the respect shifted because even those who opposed me realized I was not flinching. And that is the first phrase. It proves you are anchored, and people respect anchors. The second phrase is, I don't find that appropriate, and this one is like a shield. You pull it out whenever someone crosses a line or tries to belittle you or injects disrespect into the conversation. Because the psychology here is about boundaries. Humans unconsciously respect those who defend their dignity. If you laugh along at an offensive comment, you lose respect. If you attack with anger, you escalate conflict. But if you calmly look at someone and say, I, I don't find that appropriate, you shut down the behavior without giving it oxygen. It is short, precise, unshakable, and hard to argue against. I have used this in boardrooms when investors made snide remarks or when someone tried to undermine a colleague. And every time, the effect was the same. The room adjusted because you cannot argue with self-respect. Seneca was right. He who respects himself will be respected by others, and this phrase demonstrates self-respect instantly. The third phrase is, let's talk, when we can do so respectfully, and this one is especially powerful because it not only protects your peace, but also flips control of the conversation back to you. Most people, when faced with hostility, either match the aggression or withdraw. In silence, both options give power to the aggressor. But when you calmly say, let's talk when we can do so respectfully, you set the conditions for dialogue. You are not running away, you are setting the rules. I remember negotiations where tempers flared and voices rose. I did not raise mine. Instead, I said, we will continue when this is productive, and that shifted the psychology immediately because it made clear that I would not be bullied into noise. The Stoics called this self-mastery. I cannot control others, but you can control your response, and in doing so, you train others how to treat you. The result is that even critics who hate your position are forced to adjust to your tone, and that is respect earned through control. The fourth phrase is, I'd, I prefer not to continue this conversation, and this is like closing a door with finality. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is no more, because not every argument is worth your energy. Not every battle deserves your attention when someone is only provoking you when the dialogue is going nowhere. When the other side is more interested in winning points than finding truth. This phrase ends it with elegance, not with escalation. Imagine you are in a pointless argument about politics or in a workplace discussion that has turned toxic. You take a breath and calmly say, I'd prefer not to continue this conversation, and that is it. You do not justify, you do not explain, you simply close the door, and that act of walking away from noise is in itself a demonstration of strength. Marcus Aurelius said the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury, and this phrase is that principle in modern form because you refuse to mirror disrespect, you remain above it, and people notice. And they may not admit it, but they feel it. The fifth and final phrase is that's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it. And this one is a masterclass in combining courtesy with firmness because it acknowledges the other person's right to their view, while simultaneously asserting your independence. It is polite but unmovable, and that combination commands respect. Think about how many arguments drag on endlessly because each side tries to convert the other, but when you use this phrase, you cut through the tug of war. You give the other person recognition, but you protect your autonomy. I have used this countless times in conversations with journalists, investors, or even family members who insisted they knew better about what we should do with my life. I simply said, I respect your opinion, but I do not share it, and that ended the pressure without hostility. Seneca called it the prison of other people's opinions, and this phrase is the key out of that prison because it shows you can acknowledge without surrender. Now let me tie these five phrases together because their true power is not in isolation but in pattern. Every one of them shares three traits. They are calm, they are precise, and they are unshakable. And those are the exact signals the brain equates with leadership. So when you use these phrases regularly, you build a reputation as someone not easily rattled, someone who listens but stands firm, someone who refuses noise but commands respect. And over time, that reputation compounds until you no longer need to fight for respect, because it precedes you into the room. People will expect that when you speak, it will matter, and they will adjust accordingly. Now, some of you may wonder, will people push back? Yes, of course, but that is the a point. Respect is not about universal agreement. It is about consistent recognition. Even those who disagree will recognize your firmness because the brain cannot ignore it. In fact, research shows that people trust those who set boundaries more than those who try to please everyone. It is counterintuitive, but true. So every time you say, I understand your point, but I disagree, you build trust. Every time you say, I don't find that appropriate, you build dignity. Every time you say, let's talk, when we can do so respectfully, you build control. Every time you say, I prefer not to continue this conversation, you build authority. Every time you say, that's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it, you build independence. And each of these is a pillar of respect. Now, let us be real. These phrases require practice. You cannot just memorize them and expect magic. You must internalize them so they come out naturally in the heat of the moment. So here is my challenge to you. Choose one and use it this week. Not in a dramatic situation, but in a small one, maybe in a meeting, maybe in a family chat, maybe in an online comment, and notice the effect. Then build from there. Because mastery comes through repetition. I did not learn to launch rockets by from stockets. Reading one textbook I learned by failing, iterating, and trying again until the code worked, and you will not master commanding respect in one day. But if you use these tools consistently, you will feel the shift not just in how people treat you, but in how you feel about yourself. Because the ultimate goal here is not only external respect, it is internal respect, self-respect, and when you carry that, everything changes. So remember these five phrases. They are simple, but they are nuclear when delivered with calm precision, and they will make you the kind of person others cannot ignore, because in a world full of noise, the one who speaks with measured clarity always commands the room. Now that you have the phrases and the psychology behind them, the real question becomes, how do you actually apply this in your daily life? Because theory without execution is just noise, and we have already established noise gets you nowhere. So let's take this into the trenches of real situations, the kind you face at work, at home, and in the random friction points of everyday life. Because if you cannot translate these ideas into practice, then they are just elegant ideas, floating in your head, but if you can embed them into your behavior, they become a framework for influence. So let's start with work meetings, because that is where so many people either gain or lose respect instantly. Most meetings are a mess. Too many voices, too little clarity, everyone fighting for airtime. Now, if you want to stand out, the mistake is to fight harder for airtime. The winning move is to choose your moment and drop precision when it matters. Imagine you are in a brainstorming session and someone pitches an idea that is flashy but fundamentally flawed. You do not roll your eyes, you do not get sarcastic, you wait for the right pause, then calmly say, I understand your point, but I disagree. Here is why. And then you present one clear fact, or one clear, the question that exposes the flaw, immediately the room will shift because you just anchored the discussion in reality, while others were floating in noise over time. This builds a reputation that when you speak, it is not filler, it is signal. That reputation will open more doors than any attempt to dominate the airspace. Second, let's talk about leadership situations. Maybe you are managing a team or trying to rally people around a project. Urgency is high, emotions run hot, and if you start shouting, you lose. And respect instantly. What works is calm directives paired with the right boundaries. For example, when someone starts to get combative in a planning session, you say, let's talk. When we can do so respectfully, you are not escalating, you are controlling. And by setting that frame, you condition your team to operate within respect long term. This is how you scale leadership, not through fear, but through consistency. Third, apply it in family life because that is where respect often erodes. People take each other for granted, voices get raised. Familiarity breeds laziness, but if you bring the same principles home, you create transformation. Picture an argument with your spouse or partner over finances. Instead of matching their frustration, you say, I'd prefer not to continue this conversation right now. Let's revisit it tomorrow when we can be calm. Suddenly, the dynamic changes. You are no longer in a pointless spiral. You are choosing dignity over noise, and that one choice prevents lasting damage because respect at home matters even more than respect at work. If you cannot command it there, you will not feel it anywhere. Fourth, think about random social interactions. Someone cuts you off in traffic, someone makes a rude comment at a store, or a stranger tries to provoke you. The instinct for most is to snap back to match aggression, but you have a different tool set now. You can calmly say, I don't find that appropriate, or you can simply disengage entirely by saying nothing at all because silence is also a phrase. If used deliberately, what matters is you choose the path that preserves your self-respect and projects control, rather than letting strangers pull you into their chaos. Fifth, and maybe most important, apply it to digital life. Because online everyone is shouting. Everyone is desperate for attention, and the temptation is to join the shouting, but the ones who stand out are the ones who deliver precision with calm confidence. So when you respond to an online debate or comment, do not write 3 paragraphs of defense. Just use one precise line that signals you are firm but not flustered. Something like that's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it. Nothing more. This not only saves you energy, it signals to everyone watching that you are above the noise, and that impression compounds because digital reputation is built the same way as real world reputation. People watch how you respond under pressure and they file that away forever. Sixth, apply it with yourself because internal dialogue shapes external dialogue. How many times do you catch yourself overreacting in your head, writing mental speeches full of noise before you even open your mouth? If you can train yourself to speak to yourself with precision, instead of noise, you will carry that discipline outward. For example, instead of telling yourself, this meeting is going to be a disaster, you tell yourself, I will enter calm, I will deliver clarity, and I will exit with respect. The way you program your own brain is the way you program the responses of others. So practice these phrases even alone until they feel natural. Repetition rewires your instincts. The same way engineers run simulations before a rocket launch, by the time the launch happens, the rocket launch happens, the reactions are automatic. Seventh, apply this to negotiation scenarios. Whether it is salary discussions, contract talks, or even buying a car, negotiation is 90% psychology and 10% math. And the psychology is always about who is calmer and who can hold their frame. If you get flustered, you lose leverage. If you stay calm, you gain it. So when the other side tries to pressure you with intensity, you simply hold and say, let's continue this when we can do so respectfully. Or if they present an offer that is insulting, you say calmly, I understand your position, but I disagree. Here is my counter. That precision preserves leverage without hostility, and it often shocks the other side because they expect defensiveness. But you gave them clarity. Eighth, apply this to mentoring or parenting because the younger generation learns respect not from lectures but from modeled behavior. If you scream at them, they learn screaming. If you calmly set boundaries, they learn dignity. So when a child misbehaves, you do not shout, you look them in the eye and say, I don't find that appropriate. Or when they try to argue endlessly, and you close it with, I'd prefer not to continue this conversation. The consistency of calm boundaries is what teaches them that respect is a two-way street. Ninth, Use this in high-stress public settings, maybe a presentation, speech, or panel discussion. The nerves make most people overtalk, rush, or lose clarity. But if you enter with the mindset of delivering fewer words with more weight, you stand out. Imagine being asked a hostile question by an audience member. Instead of rambling, you say, "That's your opinion and I respect it, but I don't share it." Then move on. The audience respects your calm more than any long defense would have earned. Finally, integrate this framework into your daily identity because the goal is not to memorize 5 lines. It is to become the kind of person who naturally communicates with calm clarity. This means slowing down before speaking, stripping filler words, cutting, defensiveness, and practicing silence as a tool over time. You will notice that you do not need to try so hard. Respect will flow toward you because people sense you are not operating from insecurity, you are operating from conviction, and conviction always attracts recognition. So here is the bottom line. Application is everything. Stop thinking of these as tricks and start thinking of them as operating principles. Embed them in meetings, negotiations, family conversations online, debates, mentoring, and even self-talk. And you will discover that life begins to organize differently around you because people respect gravity. And when your words carry gravity, people cannot ignore you. That is how you turn precision into practice, and practice into power. So here we are at the end, and now the question is, what do you actually do with all of this? Because listening to ideas without action is like designing a rocket and never launching it. It looks good on paper, but it goes nowhere. Respect is not built on intentions. It is built on execution. So here is my challenge. Starting today, pick one of the 5 phrases and actually use it. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, if someone says something you disagree with, calmly say, "I understand your point, but I disagree." If someone crosses a line, use, "I don't find that appropriate." If a conversation turns toxic, deploy, "Let's talk when we can do so respectfully." If an argument is wasting your energy, close it with, "I'd prefer not to continue this conversation." If someone pressures you with opinions, reply with, "That's your opinion, and I respect it, but I don't share it." The point is to test these in the real world because respect is earned in real interactions, not in theory every time. And you use them, you will feel a shift both in how others see you and in how you see yourself. And that second part may be the most important because the truth is, the self-respect precedes external respect. You cannot demand from others what you are not willing to give yourself. So these phrases are not just communication hacks, they are mirrors. They remind you to stay calm, to stay precise, to stay anchored. And the more you live this way, the less you will even think about commanding respect, because it will happen. Naturally, people will sense it before you open your mouth. And this is where the future vision comes in. Imagine a world where more people spoke like this, where noise was reduced and precision was valued. Imagine workplaces where meetings were shorter, but the decisions were better. Imagine families where disagreements did not escalate but transformed into clarity. Imagine public debates where truth mattered more than volume. That future is possible, but it starts with individuals like you choosing to change the way you speak, choosing to use words as tools, not weapons, choosing to embody calm conviction in a culture addicted to noise. And if you do that consistently, you will find that influence follows you, because gravity always draws objects in, and the gravity of calm, precise words is impossible to resist. So the call to action is simple. Take the next step. Test the phrases, repeat them, refine them, and integrate them until they are second nature, and then watch as your world reorganizes itself around your clarity, because, in the end, respect is not imposed by force. It is inspired by character, and the future belongs to those who can speak with enough clarity to cut through the noise and enough conviction to stand firm when others waver. So go launch this in your own life, and remember, the same principle that launches rockets also launches respect. Precision beats noise every time.